Hello and welcome to another Science 9 crash course. In this episode, we're going to talk all about environmental monitoring and how we can tell when the environment has become polluted. We can categorize pollutants into two different types. The first type of wastes are called non-persistent wastes, and they can be broken down by naturally occurring processes into simpler compounds that are not pollutants. These type of wastes can harm the environment for a short period of time, but will eventually break down and become a non-factor. Many times we call these substances biodegradable because they're able to be broken down by a living organism such as bacteria or worms or fungus. The other type of wastes that are in the environment are called persistent. These wastes can accumulate in the environment and break down very slowly if at all. Some examples of persistent wastes would be DDT and other pesticides, as well as some fertilizers that farmers use on their fields. Fertilizers can be very damaging to the environment, especially to aquatic ecosystems. They contain compounds called nitrates and phosphates that lead to low oxygen conditions in water. Nitrates and phosphates can come from many different sources, such as fertilizers, sewage runoff, or even washing detergents. Nitrates and phosphates create these low oxygen conditions through a process called an algae bloom. An algae bloom is where you have rapid and excessive growth of plant material. This can cause many problems, such as blockages in irrigation systems, but more importantly, decreasing the oxygen concentration in the water. You're probably thinking to yourself, how can the oxygen levels go down if you have more plants, since plants produce more oxygen? The process goes like this. Firstly, you have an increase of nitrates and phosphates. This causes an excess amount of plant growth, including algae. All of these plants will eventually at some point die, so that will increase the amount of dead material in the water. Because of all this dead material, the number of decomposers such as bacteria will increase. And for these decomposers to be able to do their job, they require large amounts of oxygen. So this is going to decrease the amount of oxygen in the water. And of course, if there's less dissolved oxygen in the water, then fish and other organisms are not going to be able to breathe and their numbers are going to go down. There are a few steps in this process, but as you can see, an increase of nitrates and phosphates will lead to low oxygen conditions and a decrease in the number of organisms in the water. In order to determine whether these chemicals are found in the water, there are a number of tests that we can perform. We can test for the presence of these chemicals quite simply by using kits like the one shown here. One of the best ways to test the quality of the water is to test for dissolved oxygen. The higher the levels of oxygen, the healthier the water is. There is, however, an easier way to measure the quality of water, and that is by using biological indicators, or bioindicators. Some of the most useful bioindicators for an aquatic ecosystem are called macroinvertebrates. Macroinvertebrates are organisms that are large enough to see with the unaided eye, but they lack a backbone. Some of these macroinvertebrates are sensitive to water quality, so if the oxygen levels go down, the number of organisms will decrease also. Some examples of these are the stonefly larvae, mayfly nymph, caddisfly larvae, water penny beetle, and the gilled snail. Other macroinvertebrates, however, are tolerant to low oxygen conditions, so they are found typically in polluted waters. Some examples of these type of macroinvertebrates are midge larvae, blackfly larvae, pouch snail, leech, and aquatic worms. So to use these macroinvertebrates as a test, we just need to look for the presence of different macroinvertebrates in the water. If they're sensitive ones, then the water quality is good. If they're tolerant mostly, then the water quality is poor. But testing the water quality is only part of the process. We need to be able to determine where these pollutants are coming from and be able to stop them. Some of these pollutants originate from a specific location. We call these point sources. Some examples of these would be drain pipes and smokestacks. They are quite easy to monitor and to control. Other pollutants, however, diffuse throughout the environment and do not originate from a specific location. We call these non-point sources. Some examples of these would be feedlots, golf courses, and fertilized fields. So when pollution enters a stream, this is what it typically looks like. Before it enters, we have what's called the clean zone. We have high oxygen levels and lots of different types of organisms. Once the pollution enters, however, we now call this the decomposition zone, where there's lots of algae growth and lots of decomposers breaking down the dead material. Oxygen levels drop off significantly here. And then you enter into the septic zone, where the oxygen levels reach their lowest point. The stream, however, should begin to recover if no more pollutants are added to the stream. This is because oxygen in the air is mixed with the water, increasing the oxygen levels in the water. And then finally, we make it back to the clean zone, where oxygen levels are high and we have many aquatic organisms. So we've reached the end of this crash course, and hopefully you can do your part by taking care of our water systems. Thanks for listening.